We're going to discuss in this session a very exciting topic, maybe one of the most exciting topics in this conference: new technologies and the fourth industrial revolution. And I will have the pleasure to moderate the panel today, and we will make sure that we will take questions also from the audience. I was preparing for my remarks last evening, and my son, who's 12 years old, came to me and asked what I was doing. So I told him I'm going to talk about new technologies tomorrow. He said, "Why don't you look at the Apple website and check the iPhone X?" So amazingly, it seems that the iPhone X, they implemented a super chip called Neural Engine, which can operate around 700 billion operations per second. So this gives you an idea of the magnitude of the possibilities that human mind maybe cannot imagine going forward. So as we all know, the ICT sector is one of the most promising sectors for our economy. Not only in terms of growth potential, but also in terms of exports development, local and foreign direct investments, rural development, and most importantly, job creation for our young population. As Mr. Gibran Basir yesterday, His Excellency, mentioned, there is no doubt that the new technologies and the fourth industrial revolution is knocking on our door. So technologies such as Bitcoin, for example, the governor of the central bank in a conference a couple of days ago announced that Lebanon, through the central bank, will be issuing e-currency in stages. So this is a fantastic development, a disruptive approach for the banking sector. Minister Gibran Basir mentioned genome editing, 3D printing, and artificial intelligence. There are technologies such as blockchain, Internet of Things, and many other innovations that can constitute a unique opportunity for our country and future generations. So how can Lebanon embrace these new technologies? How can we leverage those to improve our GDP, to create jobs? How can we leverage the existing ecosystem to support our successful entrepreneurs? How can we boost public and private sector partnerships? And most importantly, how can we amend our existing laws, regulations, governance structures, and education system to unleash this hidden potential? So this afternoon we're going to answer these questions and more with the panel and also with the audience, with a very specific view, as said yesterday in the opening of the conference. Our objective is to identify specific recommendations and initiatives that can support this sector and that we can take up to the President and the Prime Minister for them to put it on the government agenda. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome a great group of individuals from the private sector and the public sector and subject matter experts. His Excellency Nicolas Sarnawi, currently the chairman of the UK Lebanon Tech Hub, a former Minister of Telecom in Lebanon, Mr. Nabil Aitani, chairman and general manager of IDAL, Mrs. Yasmin Al-Khouri Rafael, who is the head of business environment and innovation at the Prime Minister's office. Dr. Steve Harvey is the dean of the Alayan School of Business at the AUB. And two great entrepreneurs, Mr. Cyril Najjar, who is the CEO of Sensorair and the lecturer at UCL of London and Cambridge, and Mr. Eli Waked, who is the managing director and co-founder of SkyPro UAV. So I would like to start with you, Your Excellency. If you could shed some light on the current state of the ecosystem in Lebanon. You were one of the pioneers in setting it up. And how do you see it evolving over the coming few years?
Good morning, if I can say so. ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to be among you here today and a true pleasure to be part of this fantastic effort done to put Lebanon on the path to sustainable growth. I will focus in my brief note on the fourth industrial revolution, which is at the same time a global scale threat and a once in a millennium opportunity. A global scale threat because it can level economies to the ground. And the weakest economies like ours are even more at risk because of their small size and their fragility. A once in a millennium opportunity because it allows countries who lag behind to leapfrog and become champions of the new world economy to come. Even in the current world economy, looking at all the powerful nations in today's world, think Japan, Germany, USA, and China. They have one thing in common: a robust and ever-growing technological sector. It is through technology that innovation happens, that productivity of traditional sectors increases. New processes are developed, R&D thrives, and economies prosper. Already, the pace of technological advances is enabling people to boldly tackle and solve problems previously thought unsolvable. Technology is uniting young people effectively, erasing social and geographical borders, and empowering them to find solutions to pressing global problems, even if they live on the edge of the world. Lebanon is no alien to such endeavors. We might have been late to join the race, but we have caught up and we are there now. In recent years, Lebanon's technological entrepreneurial ecosystem experienced accelerated growth. What started as scattered individual efforts began creating noise, grabbing the attention of policymakers and enticing them to take action. Banque du Liban Circular 331 was one of the cornerstones that helped shape Lebanon's tech scene as we know it. The circular soothed what was considered the biggest pain point of entrepreneurs: access to finance. Circular 331 also drove the formation of the ecosystem and development of its different players: incubators, accelerators, venture capital funds, and other support institutions flourished. But long before the summer of 2013, a bunch of telecom ministers worked diligently to upgrade the infrastructure and launch initiatives to grow and strengthen Lebanon's digital sector. It is because of those hard-working ministers and their teams that we are standing here today to speak of a technologically enabled and innovative Lebanon. No startup ecosystem could have emerged with a 50 kilobit per second speed, which was the speed on both mobile and fixed networks when I took charge of the telecom ministry in 2011. I feel very honored to have worked alongside the people that established Beirut Digital District, that deployed the 3G and 4G networks, that secured the international cable redundancy after long and difficult negotiations with our Cypriot partners. The formidable boost that happened following all this work at the Telecom Ministry and at the BDL led to the vibrant startup ecosystem that we see today. Since 2013, more than 150 companies were accelerated and witnessed 3 exits already. Startups have been growing at a 24% yearly rate since 2009 to reach an estimated number of 300 companies active in our ecosystem. In order to support this ever-growing number of startups, 4 digital clusters have been created in Lebanon, and more than a dozen co-working spaces were initiated to host and support entrepreneurs as well as events. More importantly, this ecosystem is beginning to counter the brain drain Lebanon was facing by creating more competitive jobs, retaining high-skilled talent, creating wealth, and increasing GDP. We have lost many of our youngest and brightest minds to NASA, Apple, Google, and many others. But with the flourishing community we have here and the help of the diaspora, we are surely working on reversing the effect of the brain drain and keeping our brightest minds at home, where they belong. It is estimated that more than 4,000 computer programming students graduate per year and pool their talents into 4,000 plus software products and service companies. The current R&D budget today stands at $4 million in funding, which is almost zero, to support research happening at Lebanese universities and research institutions. Going forward, we expect the knowledge economy market size to reach $2 billion and contribute to 5% of GDP by 2025. We also expect to have 800 ICT firms creating 25,000 jobs, which will contribute $7 billion to the economy all within the next 10 years. Our aim is to place Lebanon as a regional player in the knowledge economy by 2020. We have a competitive educational system which ranks 19th worldwide for the quality of higher education and 6th in regard to quality of math and science. By 2025, we aim to be recognized as a global technological force to be reckoned with. We are entering a new age, the age of the exponential growth of information technology. Beware, it will leave no stone unturned. Every single sector will be heavily disrupted. The fourth industrial revolution is disrupting the way we do things, how we work, collaborate, create, and consume. More and more aspects of our daily lives are changing. The ubiquity of mobile and connected devices are changing how we are served and serviced. Companies are moving from factory line mass production to provide smarter, more personalized and on-demand products and services. The market's trend is shifting away from algorithmic and standardized jobs towards value-added and creative tasks, something that we, the Lebanese, excel in. The technological changes we will witness in the next 30 years will be greater than that of the last 300 years. We are talking about artificial intelligence, the ability to fly, telepathy, deep space exploration, and human genome experiments. Maybe even being able to teleport, who knows? These technologies will make our lives better, allow us to live longer and in better health, maybe visit the stars. But they will also ignite a lot of crises. All experts agree that by 2050, 47% of today's jobs will be replaced by artificial intelligence. All the jobs that are systematic, algorithmic, repetitive, and following a distinctive pattern. That's why we need to start disrupting the way we do work and start fostering innovation and creativity in our workforce, so that when the time comes, we are ready to embrace AI. I can go on for hours because the technological possibilities laid ahead of us are endless. But what we know for sure is that we need to be ready for this new age. There are two paths ahead of us: resist change and be crushed by it, or embrace it and place Lebanon at the forefront of innovative nations. We choose the latter. It may seem far-fetched, even impossible, but I am convinced that if we believe in it, if we work together, all hand in hand, away from political quarrels, we can achieve it. This is the promise, this is the dream, this is our future. God bless Lebanon and all of you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Cyril, I would like to pass the floor to you. You're an entrepreneur, right? You have set up a digital health company called Sensoair, and you're established in Lebanon, but you're operating globally, right?
Absolutely. I'm not sure if you guys hear me. Yeah, we've been very lucky to start here in Lebanon, and now we are in the UK, we're in the US, and really working with some of the world's biggest companies. And it all started here. One of the main challenges is coming back, right? Is you want to be able to come back and say, okay, let's do business as usual. So I can perhaps tell you, I can tell you a bit about Sensoair to start with. We've implemented a new technology that allows you to track everything that's in the air, from biological particles, allergens, so on and so forth, but also pollutants. We started with a simple product, and now we're covering up to 1,000 different cities around the world. We're monitoring live the air quality, but also the pollen, to understand patient symptoms. So we track, for people who have allergy or asthma, we track their symptoms, and we're able to predict and prevent them before they happen. So one of the things I think was what was a bit of a challenge is when you want to come back and when you've probably grown as a company, is what's the reality coming back home? And not to be a critic of Lebanon, on the contrary, I think it's a fantastic place and LNE, and I love the place. Yeah, that's Sensier. If you want, we can quickly go through that. So we're the first patented smart allergen and symptom tracker. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So I co-founded this company with my wife, who's a PhD in neurosciences and did synthetic biology as well. So I'm on the industrial side, and she's on the medical side. And it's both a hardware device and a mobile application that you can download. Oh, thank you, fantastic. Why allergy and asthma? It's a massive expenditure on healthcare. It's 56 billion in the US. 6.5 million people die every year. And it's something that really needs solving, and we both have allergic asthma. We built an ecosystem of products it's a cloud-based system. So we currently work with car manufacturers like Ford, like Renault, but we also work with train manufacturers or energy groups. We have physical products, but also digital products that allow you to understand air quality no matter where you are. And we were at 200 cities 3 months ago, and now we're at 1,000, so we're growing really fast. What you can also get is personalized reports, meaning that once you go to your doctor, he can know exactly where you've been and what was in the air whenever you were breathing, and what symptoms were caused at that specific moment. This comes also with notifications that allows you to know before it happens, so you can carry your inhaler or bring your medication for your kids. The gases we detect are simply pretty much everything in the air, and we now offer, we've done a partnership with the Ministry of the Environment where we offer the air quality monitoring of all of Lebanon for free to all the citizens here. So you can, if you have an iPhone, you can download Sensier. If you have Android, it'll be in January that the app will be available. This is us. We were very lucky to win a few prizes here and there around the world, which helped us really grow as a company. There's a new prize we're going to announce soon in November. It's pretty nice as well. But we were very lucky because coming from a Lebanese, coming from a background from Lebanon, we won MIT first prize. Mass Challenges was 1,396 startups from around the world, and we came in first, meaning that Lebanese entrepreneurship has the potential, the capacity of being the top entrepreneurship hub in the world, maybe the second, maybe the third, but definitely in the top 5. And this is one of the things I perhaps could even state a couple of things on. We were also looking to be featured here and there. And some of those things is how can we empower local entrepreneurs to be global, but to remain local without having to move your offices, move your workforce, and leave the country. And as His Eminence was saying, avoid that brain drain that is systematic of every successful startup ends up leaving the country. How do you keep those brilliant people in? And what are the tools? And to be honest, I'm going to be, maybe nagging a little bit, but it's very simple. Those things are basic things, and we're not local anymore. We're all global. And the reality is that competing locally is a waste of time because there is no internal consumption or demand in the market that is viable enough for 3 million or 5 million people to make a startup, become exponential the way we'd like it. So the real question is how do you open those horizons to local entrepreneurs and allow them to access international markets? So I'm going to talk about a few problems, and I know it's non-political, I'm not criticizing anyone, I'm just saying this is the issues we have as entrepreneurs. First of all, logistics, and I know Your Eminence, you've done amazing work with the internet, but how do you have an internet connection that is, for the next 20 years, I'm quoting you literally, but we are still without a viable internet connection. It might be coming, but it's still not here. So if I want to bring my office back here, it just doesn't work. Travel to the Americas, whether it's North America or South America, is impossible without direct flight. So what I'm trying to say here is how do we minimize friction for entrepreneurs? How is it the easiest way to do business around the world without having to stop through this or that country? Shipping product to Lebanon is impossible if you are doing R&D. So if I want to get my PCB ordered in an electronic board, it'll take weeks, while in my London office I'll get it the next day, literally. So these are hurdles we'd like to break. Banking as well, fintech is almost inexistent. I know it's great here, but it's inexistent compared to the UK or the US. And we're not the only country. I'm not saying we are the only country who has these issues, but we need to address them and tackle them. Also, opening a bank account internationally, if you're a subsidiary of a Lebanese company, proves extremely difficult because of money laundering regulations. And setting up a company on the legal side and tax side, setting up a company in Lebanon is very time consuming and takes up to a month, 2 months, and is very expensive. We still haven't signed intellectual property laws that allows us to do business in the US or with other European countries, meaning that whenever I walk into a manufacturing facility in the US, if I didn't have a second passport, I wouldn't be allowed in. Because Lebanon, as other countries, and these are rogue countries for the US, like 15 of them, still haven't signed the IP protection laws for a reason that honestly I do not know. And on another side, there are no company structures that simplifies doing business. If you want to set up a company here, you need to have associates. There isn't something called a société anonyme simplifiée, or société unipersonnelle. You need to have partners, otherwise it can't be a company. On the ecosystem side, and sorry, I don't want to sound like I'm nagging. I'll get back to the positive things. There are no hiring incentives here, meaning that if I want to hire international people who have experience in data analytics or machine learning or even hardware, it's almost impossible to get them to stay in the country without proper work permits. And to close with those, we'd like to fix things. We have no certifications for electronic appliances, and we have no customer satisfaction or customer or product return for customers, meaning people are less inclined to buying things because they're not protected. And we have an exceptional pool of talent. The world is fighting for this kind of pool of talent. All our kids are incredibly educated, and I see them whether it's in Cambridge University, I see Lebanese, whether it's at UCL, and we have an incredible crowd of youngsters who are eager to learn, who are looking at ways to better themselves and become the best versions of themselves. And we have all these advantages, yet these are little things that block entrepreneurs or companies in their growth. So really, doing business in Lebanon should be as simple as possible and as frictionless as possible. And to close this, it's not the mountain that breaks you, it's the grain of sand inside your shoe. And this is the grain of sand I'm talking about.
Cyril, thank you very much. I think this is a great transition to Mrs. Raphael. Mrs. Raphael sits in the Prime Minister's office in charge of developing the business environment and the innovation for Lebanon. So we've heard Cyril with I would call it a great laundry list of issues. Can you talk to us a little bit about what the government, or at least from the Prime Minister's perspective, preparing for encouraging the business entrepreneurs to have a less red tape, more innovation, more flexibility?
Of course, first I'd like to thank the organizers at LNE for what is proving to be a great conference, and it's a pleasure to be here today. Your Excellency always gives such real and inspiring speeches. Thank you for that. And Cyril, I don't know if I should thank you or what, but we'll see by the end of the panel. No, but we're very proud of such startups, and I'm going to do my presentation on that. And thank you for the list. I think you've really touched upon the key areas that we need to address. So I'm going to be doing my presentation from the podium. So we see Lebanon positioned at a very critical time where we face huge challenges ahead, may they be international, local, or regional. but we also face huge opportunities, especially in this age of the fourth industrial revolution. The aim is to put Lebanon back on a path of job creation, prosperity, and inclusive growth. And this will in turn induce confidence in Lebanon, in its private sector, in its diaspora, and most importantly, in its youth. I would like to start by showing you a small distinction in two types of entrepreneurship. The first is the SME, the small and medium enterprise. This is your standard SME, very important in the context of the Lebanese economy, where 90% of companies can be categorized as such. The second is the IDE, or the innovation-driven enterprise, and this, on the other hand, is global. From the start, it has a global perspective. It's based on an innovation. It could be a tech innovation, it could be an innovation in its business model, and although more challenging, if successful, has far a larger potential upside. Both these entrepreneurships are different in characteristics, but also will be different in the support programs they need, in the mentorship programs, in the hiring and firing needs, in the tax incentives, and so on. So although these two types of entrepreneurship are important because they both create jobs in our economy, they both create services and products, they need to be treated differently. And the IDE, although more challenging, as I mentioned, is the one that will potentially have the most upside and create the most jobs and exports. So in the context of the panel today on tech and on youth, I would like to highlight that the government needs to enable the startup and IDE ecosystem to foster the creation of vibrant, globally competitive startups who can compete globally and innovate for the future. This will in turn, as was said before, encourage Lebanese to stay, to build, and to export rather than to immigrate. So again, His Excellency touched upon the ecosystem and how far we've come. And it's true, we have all the right ingredients at our disposal. We have highly entrepreneurial private sector who have set up incubators, accelerators, VC funds, co-working spaces across Lebanon. We have a very liquid and solid banking sector with unparalleled financial expertise, and we have a loyal and strong diaspora. In fact, we've come so far that according to ArabNet, we now rank number 2 in terms of investment in tech among 14 MENA countries. In 2016 alone, we managed to attract 37 investments totaling $56 million. Having said all of this, the ecosystem has come a long way. It, however, has a long way to go for it to reach its full potential. The momentum has been launched, and it now needs our time, our perseverance, and our direction in order to fully succeed. And the government has a very clear role and an important role to play for this success. So the first thing that comes to mind is the legislation. The government has a key role to play in providing modern, supportive, and transparent legislation to help the business environment. Today, the legislation that governs the business environment in Lebanon is archaic, time-consuming, and costly. We have held numerous roundtables at the Prime Minister's office with the public and private sector, and we've come up with a list of laws that need to be amended or drafted. We've worked on some, which we thought were a priority. We've drafted a new bankruptcy law, a new law on secured transactions, a new private equity fund law, a new law on preferred shares, amendments to the Code of Commerce, and a new law on the Société Unipersonnelle, so as he was mentioning. Some of these are already in Parliament being studied, and some of them have recently been submitted to the various ministries for their comments. We all realize that legislative changes in Lebanon is a long process. However, given the dialogue and the push from all sides, we hope that this will be an efficient and quick one. The second thing that comes to mind is infrastructure. And here, in the age of the fourth industrial revolution, internet connectivity is a given. I mean, it just has to be there, right? And His Excellency Jarrah will be speaking at the next panel and will be addressing these issues in more detail. Financing. Whether a company is starting or scaling, financing is key. And here Kafalat and BDL have really been the cornerstone in enabling this knowledge economy to grow through the ISME project and through the Circular 331. Of course, a lot more can be done, and we would like to hear from you what we can do specifically at the Prime Minister's office. From our side, we're trying to support business angel networks, and we're setting up a matching grant program. On startup support services, it's very important to develop an environment conducive to entrepreneurship and to highlight entrepreneurs as role models. We're setting up a one-stop shop for business registration at the commercial registry with OMSAR. And IDAL is setting up a business support unit, which I'm sure Mr. Haitani will be talking in more details about later. IDAL is also leading on the branding and the export promotion programs. And finally, on R&D and education, it's very important to invest in research and to develop the skills needed for us to upgrade our workforce. So we want to hear from you, the private sector, the diaspora, the youth. You are the engines of our economy. And we want to hear from you your recommendations, and I hope this is what will come out of this panel today. Today, Lebanon has a unique opportunity to drive the renewal of its economy. And this is an opportunity which we simply cannot afford to waste. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasmin. At the opening yesterday night, we heard the word dream maybe tens of times, 15 times. Didn't count. Eli and his partners dreamt about the project to fly, right? Yeah. And they did fly, and they even had a great contribution in protecting the country, right? Right. Can you tell us more about this?
Yes, my presentation is in English, but I will speak in Lebanese. A few years ago, several years ago, من عدة سنين اجتمعنا 3 أشخاص وقررنا نعمل فكرة لبنان. وقت جينا نخبر العالم عنها قالوا لنا عم تحلموا إنه هاي الشغلة ما فيكم تعملوها بلبنان، كثير صعبة تنعمل بلبنان. بدكم دولة وراكم، بدكم مصاري كثير، هذا حلم. هلا قولوا لنا عنكم أنتم جنين، يعني هيدا مسحة، معقولة أنا أعمل هاي الشغلة بلبنان؟ هلا حبينا التحدي وفتنا فيها، قلنا ما في شيء مستحيل. هلا ما فينا نلومهم لانه بلبنان عندنا مثل شيء سلبي حاطين لنا براسنا ما فينا ننجح بقلب لبنان، لازم نطلع برات لبنان تنعمل شيء هالقد مهم. هذا طبيعة عشنا هيك بلبنان. هلا أول فترة شفنا مصاعب، شفنا شوية obstacles، بس قدرنا نقطعهم. وقت اجتمعنا بالمعارض برا شفنا كومبيتيتورز لنا كمان كان في عندهم شويه مشاكل وقطعوها، فشفنا مشاكلنا كانت شوي طبيعيه بهالدومين اللي عندنا. هلا الفكره اللي عم نحكي عنها منا ابلكيشن، منا اي كوميرس، منا سمول هايدا جادجت، مع احترامنا للكل. نحن عم نحكي عن طياره يو اي في، طياره بلا طيار بتطير بلبنان، بتروح ل3 ساعات، بتروح 40-50 كيلومتر. الطيارة فيها 100 قطعة بقلبها، وهالقطعة انعملت كاستمايز لنا. في قطعة انعملت بلبنان، في قطعة انعملت برات لبنان. هالقطعة ما بتلاقيها بالراف أو بالسوبر ماركت بتشتريها مع أونلاين. نحكي مع المعامل، نقول شو بدنا، أي طريقة بدنا إياها، يعملوا لنا إياها على السنسر صابونا وتجي على لبنان. الكاميرات، الطيارة بتحمل كاميرات، الكاميرات بتراقب حدود، بتراقب أماكن الدولة بحاجة لها. بنشتغل كمان على كمبيوتر فيجن، لأنه مش مهم إنه بس تراقب، مهم تقشع شو عم بتراقب وتفهم شو هو اللي عم بتراقبه، وهيدي كتير مهمة لمعارك موجودة بلبنان. الطيارة مش بس الجيش اللبناني بيستعملها، وهيدي حازة ثقة الجيش اللبناني، حتى في دول عم تستعمل طياراتنا. وعم بحكي عن دول مش دول تعبانة ما حدا بيساعدها، عم بحكي عن دول مع كتير مصاري. تحدينا شركات مثل الايربيوس، بوينغ، كانت بضاعتنا موجوده، نقوا الطيارات تعبوا لنا، عندنا تكنولوجيا كثير متطوره وبسعر كثير منافس كان. وهذا خلانا الشغله انه نقلع فيها. ومثل ما قلت ما في حدا عم بيساعدنا. نحن فريق صغير طلعنا من لبنان ومشينا فيها. ومثل ما بتعرفوا اللبناني شاطر بيوصل بين الشرق والغرب. نحن عملنا نفس الشيء، برمنا على المعامل برا مثل ما قلت لكم وطلبنا منهم اشياء حتى هن ما كانوا مفكرين فيها شو بدنا. هيدي الشغله ساعدتنا لانه الجيش اللبناني كان كل يوم يتمرن على طياراتنا ويشوف شو بحاجه لها. وكان يقول لنا شو بده زياده، شو كان بده شيء زياده، يعني سقبنا الظرف بلبنان لانه كل يوم عندهم مهمات. وهيدي الشغله كثير نجحتنا وسبقنا بلدان متطوره بهالضمن. هلا هون ما عم بعمل انا ماركتينج او عم بيع الطياره، نحن عم نحكي عن مشروع حلم، وبقول لكل شخص عنده حلم حتى لو بشوف انه ما معقول يزبط بلبنان بقول له 100% بيزبط. وهيدي الشغله كثير مهمه لانه في ناس يقولوا لنا انه خلوا اجريكم على الارض ولو عم تحلموا. قلنا لهم رح نخلي اجرينا اكيد بلبنان بس حلمنا رح يكون فوق الغام. فطياراتنا بتطير فوق الغام وساعدت باخر حرب الجيش اللبناني بتحرير لبنان. هلا نحكي عن شغله شو بحاجه نحن للدوله، وهيدا اهم نقطه. عملنا طياره كثير مهمه، استعملنا تكنولوجيا كثير مهمه، طورناها بلبنان، استعملنا طاقات اشخاص بلبنان. بس شغله واحده حالها ما بتكفي. اذا البنك اجى قال لي هيدي مصاري مثل كفالات، هي مصاري على 1% فايده كمان ما بتأدينا. نحن دائما بنحكي عن شيء سيركل. السيركل او سايكل، انه عملنا برودكت مالنا بحاجه لمصاري، ما يمكن الدوله اعطتنا مصاري، بحاجه كمان الدوله تفتح لنا اسواق. نحن فتنا معرض او معرضين واخذنا اوردر قطع المليون بمعرض او معرضين. نحن الدولة هون بصير دورة تفتح لنا سوق لبرا، الدولة مثل ما بتطلع لبرا بتقول لهم اشتروا منا تفاح بناخذ شيء بالمقابل. نحن فيها الدولة كمان تقول لهم فينا نعطيكم 100 طيارة، شو بتعطونا بالمقابل؟ بدل ما تنطر من برا هيبات لطيارات او لاشياء مثل الطيارات فيها تستعمل الموجودة بلبنان وتوفر الهيبات لاشياء كمان اهم بحاجة لهم نحن بعد مش قادرين نعملها بالوقت الحاضر. فهيدي هي كفكرة الطيارات اللي عملنا اياها. أنا أكيد بشكر المنظمين على LNE، بشكر أكيد معالي الوزير نقول صحنا به، بشكر أكيد معالي الوزير جبران باسيل على LTE وعلى LNE اللي من وراهم عم نقدر نطلع لبرا وعم نكون أقوى لبرا.
شكرا. ما هيأت على أستاذ نبيل عتاني بعتقد. النقطة اللي ركزت عليها هي مش الفاينانسنج، يمكن مثل ما حكيت ياسمينة أو الإيكو سيستم اللي موجود بلبنان، حطيتوه وقدرتوا تنجحوا. هو كيف لبنان قدر يساعد بفتح أسواق خارج لبنان، صح؟ مع الأستاذ نبيل إذا هذا موضوع إيدال هو صلب المهمة المؤسسة عندك شوي شو المبادرات اللي عم تاخذوها؟ بعرف كنت مشارك بالجايدكس حوالي اسبوعين واخذتوا جوائز تقريبا شوي.
اولا مساء الخير. حقيقه اول شيء خلينا نشكر LNE على هذه المبادره وعلى هذا البلاتفورم LNE على هذه المبادره وهذا البلاتفورم اللي يسعى الى التطرق الى الوسائل الحديثه والى المشاكل اللي ممكن تتعرض نمو لبنان. كما LNE قدر نجح ان يكون منصه اساسيه لكل التبادل على مستوى الدياسبورا ومستوى الجاليات اللبنانيه المنتشره حول العالم. نامل لLNE ان يكون له هذا المستقبل. حقيقه الموضوع اللي نحن بين يدينا موضوع متشعب كثير. كيف يعني طبعا ما حدا تطرق الى الاحصاءات والى الانجازات يلي تطرق الى معالي الوزير الصحناوي او الى الخطه تبعت الجفرمنت اللي تطرقت اليها الانسه ياسمين يا السيده ياسمين، وانما حتطرق الى ما هي التحديات اللي عم تنشا امام المؤسسه العامه لتشجيع الاستثمارات في عمليه استقطاب الاستثمارات او في عمليه او الفروق الاخرى اللي هي مربوطه فيها وهي ترويج وتسويق المنتج اللبناني من القطاعات الاقتصادية اللبنانية. قطاع الانوفيشن، قطاع التكنولوجيا والمعلومات هو من القطاعات الأكثر نمواً اليوم في لبنان، وعم بيحقق نتائج كثير كبيرة معتمداً على القوى البشرية الكفؤة يلي يتمتع فيها لبنان على مستوى لبنان، على مستوى التعليم، خاصة على مستوى التعليم في موضوع المات اند ساينس. هذا الموضوع عم بيعطي كثير من التحديات امام لبنان لانه عنده كثير من البوتنشل، عم يتواجه بكثير من المشاكل ومن المحيطات واخرها ما يحصل اليوم في المنطقه من طريقه ما والى ضغط على الاقتصاد اللبناني. اليوم هذا الاقتصاد اللي عم نشوف انه كل الاقتصادات العالم، واذا نحن عم ناخذ العنوان يلي وضع فيها هذه البانل اللي هي 4 IR اللي هي الثوره الرابعه الصناعيه بعد الثوره الثالثه اللي اعتمدت على التكنولوجيا، والثوره الثانيه اللي اعتمدت على الفيول وعلى الكهرباء. اليوم عمالين نشهد اشياء جديده هي عمليه الثوره الرابعه، والثوره الرابعه اللي تعتمد اساسا على الانفورميشن، تعتمد على اساسا على كيف تعمل ترانسفير للترانسبورتيشن. واليوم بلشت تاخذ ان يكون في انتجريشن بين التكنولوجي اللي نحن فيها وما بين جسم الانسان نفسه. عشان هيك نحن عم نشهد تغير في موضوع استقطاب الاستثمارات الى الدول. اليوم ما بقى في استقطاب استثمارات كما كان موجود هيوج انفستمنت. اليوم انه اضطر الامريكاني انه يروح ياخذ ورك فورسز من الصين حتى يعمل معمل هونيك او الاوروبي مشان عمليه تخفيض سعر كلفه الورك شوب القوى العامله. اليوم هذا ممكن اليوم يكون المانيفاكتشرنج سمارت مثل ما قال معالي الوزير بكلمته، حيكون سمارت وحيكون بناء على الديماند تبع الكونسيومر اتسيلف. مشان هيك اذا بنفكر نحن بعمليه ستارت اب استثمار كيف نستفيد من المقومات الانتاجيه الموجوده عندنا ونربطها بالاقتصاد المستقبلي. ومن هون التحدي اللي بينشا على عمليه استنهاض القوى البشريه الموجوده لتكون عندنا رياده اعمال، لتكون عندنا نوع من البزنسز. مثل ما شفنا المفخره لنا من اللبنانيين بالنسبه للاكسبتنس اللي قدم لنا كيف حققوا نتائج ومن ممكن من غير دعم. اليوم نحن كدولة وبتوجيهات حقيقة من الحكومة من دولة الرئيس ومن البيان الوزاري اللي طرح عملية دعم التكنولوجيا، نحن اليوم عم نتحرك على أكثر من صعيد. الصعيد الأول هو عملية كيفية دعم هذه المبادرات وهالستارت ابس لحتى يحققوا نتائج على 3 مستويات. كيف حيكونوا انتجريتد مع السيستم اللبناني، وهيدي شغله ما لها تحدي سهل انك الستارت اب يعرف كيف يفوت بالسيستم اللبناني، ان كان على مستوى الليجيسليشن، ان كان على مستوى التسجيل وعمليه او على مستوى التاكس ريفورم، التاكس سيستم وما يترتب بهذا الموضوع. وهيدي جزء اساسي من اداره 2 من عمل البي اس يو يلي ذكرته مدام ياسمينة في عمليه البي اس يو البزنس سبورت يونت. نحن المهمة الأخرى من هذا الموضوع هو ما يتطرق بعملية الانترناشونال ماركت. كيف فيك تعمل ستارت ابس انه يفكروا جلوبالي، كيف يفكروا يوصلوا للانترناشونال ماركت، كيف يعملوا شغلهم مبني اساسا من بدايته على عملية الوصول الى الانترناشونال ماركت. لانه اليوم ما حنشتغل لوكالي بعد شوي، ما حنكون كل بلد عم يشتغل عم تكون تشتغل كل المواضيع كلها حتكون مرتبطه ببعضها. بالبزنس سبورت يونت اللي كمان نحن اخذناه كموديل حطيناه ببيروت هلا مبدئيا ببلش، وصار في ستارت ابس بلشوا يجوا على هذا اليونت لحتى ياخذوا هذه الادفايسز وهذه المينتورينج بهذا الموضوع. بس نحن اليوم الخطه الثانيه من هذا الموضوع كيف نصل الى البزنس سبورت كيف يوصل الى ستارت اب في مكان عمل. اليوم ما بجوز انه نحن ببيروت انه يكون ستارت اب سنتريتد لهذه السيرفيسز، لانه ستارت اب هو يمكن موجود بجنين، يمكن موجود بعلبك، يمكن موجود بعكار. ونحن بهذا الموضوع حيكون عندنا الموديل بزنس سبورت يونت بيروت، بزنس سبورت يونت ساوث، بقاع اند نورث. سيكون في مشاركه من القطاع الانتاجي في كل منطقه، حيكون مشارك في هذا اليونت لحتى يقدر يستفيد من هذه الابتكارات، هذا الانوفيشن، هذه الابتكارات، هذا الموضوع. بالمقابل في عندنا خطه ثانيه اللي مترافقه مع هذا الموضوع، هي عمليه الكلاسترنج زونز اللي عم ننشئها في كل المناطق، اللي معتمده على المقومات تبع كل منطقه. ويكون بهذه الكلاسترنج زون بتجميع الصناعات التقليديه حيكون في الانوفيشن سنتر او الانكيوبيترز او عمليه السبورت سيستم يلي هو بيربط الانتاج التقليدي الموجود في المنطقه الى عالم الانوفيشن والى عالم التكنولوجيا الحديثه، حتى يكون منافس بالعالم الاخر. نحن اليوم في عالم منافسي، اسواق كثير ما سهله، اسواق كثير صعبه، عم تعتمد على الكواليتي اكثر من الكوانتيتي. نحن قدرانين نحقق هذه الكواليتي بشويه تعاون بين القطاع العام والقطاع الخاص. وشكرا.
Last but not least, Dr. Steve Harvey will give us his perspective about how the education system, whether at the university level or at the school level, would evolve or should evolve. In particular, we're interested how this can happen in our country to embrace this revolution or go hand in hand, I would say, with this fourth industrial revolution. Dr. Harvey, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. First of all, thank you for the welcome, and it's a pleasure being here and assisting this. And I think this is an important topic, one that we will not be able to firmly understand for some years now, but we can certainly start talking about it, trying to figure out ways of dealing with it. And no less in education is this an issue for us that we constantly are asking ourselves the question every day, how we're going to enter the new era from an educational standpoint. And each educational institution, people within that institution, have posed themselves that question repeatedly. We're no different at AUB or at the School of Business. So the question that is posed to us quite often, particularly by our students, but also, of course, people generally speaking, is what are the jobs of the future? Jobs of the future will be serving what we know, the fourth industrial revolution. That we know for a fact. One very different and a much faster paced environment than anything we've ever seen before. But when we answer what are going to be the jobs of the future, I think we get immediately into where the problem areas are with education, because we start thinking about the future as being made of jobs. And frankly, that is perhaps one of the first moves that we have to begin to make changes to, is the notion of why does someone enter the educational system. If we look at what the fourth industrial revolution is proposing, and this is a definition offered by, of course, the World Economic Council, is the notion that the fourth industrial revolution is going to blur the lines between the physical, the digital, and the biological spheres. That means that we're going to see something that we can't even possibly imagine today. I don't think there's a technology that anyone can present today that is going to do justice to what we're going to experience in 20 years from now, given the creativity that goes into these systems, and particularly given the involvement now increasingly of artificial intelligence. So clearly, that last part, the blurring of those three spheres, is something that we can't possibly imagine. We can try to typify it. So what is changing? Well, there clearly are a number of things in education that we're being paying attention to that is changing. One of the things that is most obvious to all of us, and we're going to be talking about it repeatedly, and again, I suggest that this may be a false step if we get stuck in this, is we often talk about what the disruptive forces are. You can grab these lists pretty much anywhere on the internet. Most think tanks will give you a list of things such as artificial intelligence, virtual augmented reality, robotics, etc., etc. And then we suggest that education needs to focus on these areas and begin to think of these areas as something that's important to take up the new era of education. The question that I have, is this where we should be rethinking education from? Is this the point at which education needs to be thought of? I think not. I think that we need to go deeper than that. I think we need to ask ourselves, what are human beings going to be contributing to the world of the future as part of that, as biological parts of that sphere of melding that's going to occur? And I think what we start to talk about are some of the skills that we have as human beings that are going to take on new shapes and new forms as we move forward. So the World Economic Forum, I think, has done some good work here, thinking about, at least at a philosophical level, as to where we were going to be going. And I draw our attention here to the massive changes that we're seeing over time, but even within 5 years, we're seeing a reprioritization of these lists. And I draw your attention to the top 3 here. Nowhere in the past, and frankly nowhere in educational systems, do we focus on those top 3 things, at least not effectively. I think we might try to. And that is the importance of complex problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity. The question is, how well are our educational systems today designed to develop those? We're content focused when you think about it. We teach disciplines. We teach people facts about life that they can then use in their jobs for the future. See the connection here. So the challenge for us is to say to ourselves, how do we begin to prepare people for those things? And then look at the next 3 on the list. It's about how we work together. It's about the human interaction. Maybe even human-machine interaction now becomes that much more important in this and becomes, if you wish, part of this whole process. Is this a definitive list? Probably not. But what it's pointing us to is the idea that whatever we're doing in education right now is probably far removed from what at least we are pushing ourselves to think is important about the future. So, what should the educational sector do to respond to this? And I'm going to take a higher education university perspective on this, and I don't want to suggest that this is the view of AUB. This is the view of one person at AUB, a dean of a business school, who has studied this for some time, and this is what I think is happening. Let's start from where we have looked at classic universities. And everyone is aware of the idea of a closed versus open system concept, or at least the idea that a closed system is operational within its own means, it doesn't interact with its environment, versus an open system is much more interactive and porous to its environment, in other words. Universities have generally operated, historically, as closed systems. You have a knowledge base that's within the university, the experts, the professors, the PhDs, that deliver some teaching, and that ultimately leads to a form of assessment that we judge to be good or not about whether a person has met the criteria of having been sufficiently educated to go out in the world and take a job. Most universities, in fact, have prescribed to this model over the years as a classic form of delivering expert knowledge to individuals who are preparing themselves for the world of work. Worked for many, many, many years and very effectively. Obviously, universities are responsive, and they have been responding. And there's a growing number of universities that I think are in what I call the permeable system stage. And the permeable system stage is where the classic model operates, but it's permeated by external experts and people who help assist in the learning process. And we push people out through internships, learning experience, to bring this knowledge back and forth, almost like an apprentice type of model with the world that allows a person to learn going forward. The example of Cyril, who of course is an entrepreneur and teaches in a university, is an example of an entrepreneur who comes in, steps in, and brings another form of knowledge, a current knowledge with the theoretical knowledge, and students will take this and move forward. This is what I call the permeable model, but it's far from where I think we need to be. This is not education for the future. I think education for the future is going to be a much more open system. But think about it as open source software, if you want, to a certain extent. In other words, the education of a person is going to be contributed to by an entire community of people, and not simply people within the higher education system. Think of the higher education of the future as a network in which people enter to begin to discover and learn towards their future on a series of projects that they're engaged in. I'm talking at very high levels here, I understand, in the abstract, but I think that that's where we need to begin thinking about this. Perhaps putting it into contrast is one way for us to sort of understand what I'm suggesting that educational systems are going to have to do. Learning, which used to be the responsibility of faculty, I think now is going to be the responsibility of a community. Okay? For business to say that universities aren't preparing people well enough is not an argument for me. Why is business not involved in helping us prepare those students? Why is not the community involved with us in helping us? And they are increasingly so, and they need to be increasingly responsible for doing so. Assessment. It usually is disciplinary standards that decide what is, in fact, adequate or not. I think increasingly we're going to perhaps even see the traditional form of assessment disappear, and we're going to expect that people produce certain outcomes. In fact, I don't even expect a degree in the long term is going to be as meaningful as it is now. Objectives. I believe that the academic content, the notion of teaching people an academic content, has to give way to discovery and learning. We're going to say learning later. Learning to learn is going to be much more important than the content. The content we can get anywhere. The information age has provided us with the opportunity of getting all the content we need. We don't need a university to deliver that to us. Structure. This is probably the biggest problem that we have to deal with. We think in terms of units, hours, the number of credits that a student gets, or the number of weeks that it is in a semester, how many semesters will equal a degree. A bachelor's degree is 4 years or 3 years. These are detriments to our future when we think about it. One of the challenges that I have with my faculty right now, of getting them to be creative and generate new opportunities in the classroom for learning, is that they keep coming back, well, there's the credit system. There's the government requirements that we must do this. There's this and there's that. We should be moving towards instead looking at learning opportunities and capitalizing on learning opportunities within the educational sector as a way to advancing people. And finally, the goal has to change. Preparing students for jobs has to begin to move towards preparing students who can learn. Because knowledge has a very, very short life and is increasingly short. Thank you.
نفتح شوي النقاش لنركز على التوصيات. نجرب نشوف نطرح بعض الامور، نجرب نطلع بتوصيات حتى لو الوقت ما بقى يسمح لنا، بس نركز على التوصيات الاساسيه. حوجه اول سؤال معالي الوزير. من حوالي اسبوعين يمكن تم تعيين المجلس الاقتصادي الاجتماعي. لاحظنا بس طلعنا على الجوبز اللي مغطيين او المهن اللي مشاركين بالمجلس انه ما في وجود لاي ممثل لقطاع المعلومات او التكنولوجيا. من حوالي اسبوعين الحكومه الاماراتيه عينت وزيرين جدد للحكومه، وزير للارتفيشال انتليجنس ووزير للادفانس ساينسز يمكن اللي كان بتروح بدومين الايروسبيس ديفنس وكل الامور اللي علاقه بالتكنولوجيا المتقدمه. يعني نحن عم نحكي انه هيدا موضوع اساسي وضروري لدفع الاقتصاد للامام. كيف هيدا الموضوع بده يطلع بالسلم من الاولويات مع الوزير؟
يعني نحن بلدنا بتعرفوا قد ايه صعب، ونحن عم نحكي بالمستقبل بالمعنى اكثر شيء متطور بالعالم. يعني عم نطلع بالمحلات اللي عم يطلع منهم تكنولوجيز يلي هي بتغير العالم، يلي انجا اللي عم يطلعوا عندهم عم يصدقوا انه عم يصيروا. يعني هالقد نحن راسنا بمحل فيري ادفانس، ونحن ببلد كثير صعب. يعني كهرباء لحد هلا ما عندنا، بتعرفوا النظام السياسي تبعنا قد ايه معقد، وقد ايه الحكومه حتى الشخص اللي عنده نيه منيحه بالحكومه، والحكومه الحاليه فيها دايناميك يعني احسن بكثير من الدايناميك اللي كانوا قبل، ولكن عم بتشوفوا قد ايه في صعوبات للواحد يتقدم. فالواحد اوقات يعني انا يعني كل يوم هالصعوبات بتقبلهم براسي. انا بجرب اكون
خلي الكل يفوت بهالجهد الفكري لنشوف شو احسن طريقه الواحد يحط جهده. انا بشوف انه اول شيء لازم يكون في ثقه، نوسع بقعه الثقه بانه هذا المستقبل، وانه نحن اللبنانيه فينا، يعني نحن من اكثر شعوب بالعالم اللي قابله وجاهزه ليكون هي شريكه بهالتطور السريع اللي عم بيصير. وشفنا اليوم 2 examples وفي منهم كثير، يعني بيتعجب الواحد يشوف قد ايه في نجاحات، قد ايه في شباب لبناني طلع بافكار ركبها عملها ما سال حدا، وصل السلعه تبعيته للعالم كله، عمل سكسس ستوري ونحن ما معنا خبر وين. وثالث شيء نخلي المجتمع كله يآمن، يعني يآمن انه الفورس اندستريال ريفولوشن از هابينينج، وانه اذا كنا براتا حيكون وضعنا منه منيح as individuals, as families, as universities, as investors، يعني across the board. اذا فينا نوصل هالقناعه لكل اللبنانيين بنكون عملنا شيء كثير منيح. لانه حتى بلا اذا الحكومه مشيت على مهلها لتصلح كثير من القضايا اللي نحن بنعاني فيها، ستيل نحن فينا نعمل كثير اذا اقتنعنا، اذا حطينا جهدنا مع بعض، اذا البرايفت سيكتور امن وحط الجهد اللازم. وهذا الشيء اصلا عم بيصير، يعني بس لازم قد ما فينا نوسع بقعه الايمان بهذا القطاع. انا برايي هيدي اهم شغله، وعم نجرب قد ما فينا يعني ضوي على النجاحات، ضوي على القدرات الموجوده بلبنان. واظن انه هاي الرقعه يعني عم نشوفها عم تكبر سنه من بعد سنه. انا اظن انه بالسنين اللي جايه رح نشوف قد ايه وسعت، لانه ما عم نشوف كثير ناس بقى عم بيقولوا لا هذا الشيء نحن ما بنآمن فيه. وعم بحكي عن مزارع، عم بحكي عن صناعي، عم بحكي عن اداري، عم بحكي عن مسؤول، حتى المسؤول السياسي صار في هالاقناع عم بيزيد، وهذا اللي بيخلي الديناميكيه تكبر وتعطي نتيجه اكثر.
شكرا. يعني طرحت فكره حابب يعني ترجع توضحها اكثر بموضوع الاكسبورت والتصدير.
نعم.
كيف في مؤسسه مثل الاداره مثلا، شو هي الطلب او الطلبين اللي انت براكتيكال اكيد عمليين قادر تتوجه فيهم اداره مثل الاداره او المؤسسات الحكوميه لتساعد شركات مثل شركاتك تقدر تكبر حجم اعمالها بالتصدير؟ شو هن الشغلات؟
يعني انا في شغله لاحظتها هلا، الدكتور عطاني مسؤول عن الاداره، دكتور ستيف he's talking about how to teach the new generation. مدام ياسمين عم تحكي عن كيف يساعدوا لبرا. معالي الوزير عم بقول اوكي في عندنا مشكله، يمكن ما نقدر نعمل وزاره او نعمل شيء نقدر نساعد، بس يمكن نشوف شو المشكله، نشوف كيف نلاقي لها حل. مثل ما قلنا انه هيدا اتس سايكل، وكلنا هون بنقدر نعمل هالسايكل ونطلع فيه لبرا. الاكسبورتيشن هي اهم نقطه، لانه في يكون عندنا احلى برودكت بس مش قادرين نطلع فيه لبرا. لبنان بلد صغير، قد ما نعطي طيارات للجيش اللبناني وقد ما ياخذ منها، لبنان بلد صغير. البزنس هو برات لبنان. ومثل ما حكينا انه اداره عندها معارف برا، فيها توصل تحكي مع الدوله اللبنانيه ومع الدول اللي برا انه شو بحاجه، ونحن شو نقدر نعطيكم. يمكن الدول الموجوده اللي هي بنعتبرها يمكن دول افريقيانيه ما عندهم طيارات اكزامبل، ما عندهم هاي تك تكنولوجي، شو رايكم تاخذوا منا طيارات وناخذ بالمقابل شيء ثاني منهم؟ هون يمكن دور الاداره بيقدر يكون لان
خليك على صحيح. هون نركز على البرودكت بشكل عام، تشجيع التصدير بده يتم على موضوع التكنولوجيا.
صحيح، لانه اولا موضوع التكنولوجيا خلينا نعطي فكرياتنا انه صار ضاغط علينا وصرنا كلنا مؤمنين فيه، مثل ما قال معي الوزير بس ما في عنده وزاره الاقتصاد. اللي هي الاي بي، اذا بدك تروح تعمل اي بي بدك تروح على وزاره الاقتصاد تسجل متاكات ماركه تبعت الفول، يعني انه هي اللي مثلها ما عندها هذا الموضوع لازم نعترف فيه ولازم نشتغل عليه لحتى يكونوا على الشباب الحاضر، الشباب اللي عم يطلع يكون عندهم حضن يقدر يشتغل على اساسه. الاكسبورت نحن وهذا الموضوع عم بقوله لانه كنت انا من اسبوعين بجايتكس، اخذت معنا تدعمنا مشاركه 14 ستارت اب ب 14 فكره. شاركوا ال 14 مع 200 ستارت اب من الريجن ومن العالم. 54 من هال 200 تأهلوا للسيمي فاينل. من هال 54 4 لبنانيين من ال 14. لما طلعوا البرايزز اللي هن 5 برايزز، 2 من اللبنانيين اخذوا 2 من 5 برايزز من هدول الشركات. عملية وصولهم إلى الانفسترز كانت أسهل، لأنه كانوا صار في اكسبلورينج، صار في نوع من الهايلايتنج على هذه الاكتيفيتيز، على هذه الأفكار المبدعة، وكلياتهم راحوا باتجاه الفن. واحد راح كان بعمل الفرنتشر، وواحد بعملية الروبوتكس. أفكار كثير، واليوم الإيكو سيستم عم بيساعد اليو كي. بتعرف في عندك كل الانكيبيترز، في كثير من الاكسلريترز، السنتر 331 عم بيساعد، العالم عم بيساعد بعضها. بس هلا بكل صراحه لازم يكون في حضن يحضن هذه المبادرات بوزاره تعرف تحكي نفس اللغه مع هذه الارض، مع هذه الاكبر. بالنسبه للاكسبورت وصولي لهذا، نحن حقيقه كمؤسسه معنيين بترويج وتصدير المنتجات اللبنانيه في كل القطاعات المنتجه، وبالتالي على الاكتيفيتيز في قطاعات الصناعات الغذائيه، اكتيفيتيز في التكنولوجيا، اكتيفيتيز بالزراعه، بكل هذا المثل. One of our mission in IT كيف توصلوا للانترناشونال ماركت، بس هذا مبني على اعتماد. يعني اليوم انت عندك شغله كثير مهمه انه نتواصل. نحن قدرنا نحط نحن وياك خطه كيف نوصل ل your target audience. انه ما فيك تروح تروق وين ما كان، انت تروح your target. نحن
شكرا
على هذا الموضوع. بالنسبه للقطاعات الانتاجيه يمكن يكون في ماس كامل بدي اشوفه، بيوليشن كامل ناخده مع الانترناشونال. هذا الموضوع يختلف.
شكرا استاذ نبيل.
خليني بس اقول شغلتين كثير سريع. الوزير الخارجيه عم يعمل الدبلوماسيه الاقتصاديه، يعني هي بتجاوب على جزء من اللي بتعطوه، انه لازم يكون عندنا نحن سفراء عم بيروجوا للسلع اللبنانيه والاقتصاد اللبناني والشركات اللبنانيه اللي بيصير بكل بلاد العالم من عدا لبنان. هذا الشيء عم يتحضر وفي موافقه من الحكومه ورح يصير. الشغله الثانيه اكيد لازم وزاره الاتصالات تصير وزاره الاي سي تي، يعني اظن كل القطاع مثل ما سمعت حدا عم يقول العكس، لذلك وهذا الشيء بالريكومنديشن اللي عم يطلع.
شكرا. كان وقتنا مخصص لساعة ونص بس تأخر الغد. رح آخذ سؤالين بس نرجع نختم، لأنه في بانل رح يبلش بعد دقيقتين ومعي الوزير الجراح صار وصل، يعني جاي نختم.
بنسمع انه عم نحكي بموضوع الاكسبورت اوف ذا تكنولوجي واللبنانيز برودكتس، بس انا بحس انه قبل ما نبلش نصدر لبرا لازم يكون في تشجيع من عنا من لبنان لللبنانيز برودكتس. بتلاقي انت عايز كرسي، بتروح بتدور على كرسي من عند واحد اشقر عيونه زرق بدل ما تيجي تاخذها من عند واحد شعره اسود عيونه سود. قبل ما نبلش نفكر بالاكسبورت لازم الحكومه عنا بلبنان تشتغل على انه هي تحاول انه تشجع الكرياتيفيتي اللبنانيه وتستعمل البرودكت تبعها بلبنان.
في عندك سؤال محدد؟
لا بس انا
وصلت الفكره.
ثانك يو.
Question actually to Cyril about the app. Today it shows that the index is 10, it's very high, don't leave. 10 out of 1, is there a reference? How bad is that?
It's 10 out of 10.
Okay, 10 out of 10. So how bad is that? The second solution is your idea about strategic, the creation of ministry organization, and is it the Ministry of Telecom and switch, or is there a better sort of option?
Thank you for the question. I could answer in Arabic or in English, whatever. Arabic. أولا التلوث بالبلد عم بيكون شيء هلا مش حق على حدا معين، بس نحن ككل أكيد مشكلة الكهرباء أو مشكلة السيارات أو العجقة وكل هالأشياء بتسبب تلوث وتزيد التلوث. يعني كل ما قطعت الكهرباء وديروا كل الموتورات بكل بيروت، هيدا fine particles PM1 PM2.5 PM10 NOx all those كل هالاشياء اللي عم تلوث وعم تسبب خطر على صحة المواطن بطريقة مباشرة. يعني هو بس تتعرفوا مثل أنا يعني بقارن البولوشن الدخان، الدخان لوتو مثل الرشا رولات، فيك تدخن 200 سيجارة بحياتك أو 2000 سيجارة أو مليونين سيجارة ما يصير لك شيء. فيك تدخن وحدة and you turn a cell into a cancerous one وبتصير عندك سرطان. نفس الشيء بالتلوث، بيكفي انه يكون في one mutation وميرسي يعطيك العافيه. فنحن اذا مش حنوطي هالبولوشن بالبلد بقدرتنا نحن كشعب، مش ضروري نجي دائما نقول الحق على الدوله، نحن كشعب عم نلوث. أكين لأنه الأي سي داير كل الوقت، أكين لأنه الجنراتور بيدور حتى لو وقت نحن مش بالبيت. All these reasons عم بيسببوا هيدي الاندكس اللي عم تشوفه انت بالاب which is 10 over 10. اكيد عالي كثير، بس نحن تعطي شويه يعني تفاؤل بالموضوع. بعدنا احسن من دبي او السعوديه او الصين او بلاد كثير، بس منا احسن من باريس لندن او غيره. نحن يعني we are in a middle position that is still that we can still fix. يعني it's 10 today but it was 5 yesterday. So it's not always that bad.
بتشكر الجميع. عفوا ما فينا ناخذ اسئله بعد البانل الثاني رح يتاخر اكثر واكثر في كلوزنج للساعه 6. ال LNE هي مؤسسه رح تستمر، مش كونفرنس رح تنتهي. نحن مع معالي الوزير قبل الكونفرنس اشتغلنا كثير على شو معقول يكونوا التوصيات، وهلا اكيد رح نرجع نحن ونضيف عليهم التوصيات اللي طلعت معنا اليوم ديسكشن والشغل. نوعدكم انه نتابع هذا الموضوع كمان في LNE مشاركه نوعا ما بالعهد الجديد، يعني هذه ضغط ايجابي عليها انه تستمر بالتوصيات وتحقق بقى البعض منها. حبيت اذكر في كاتب امريكي اوائل الثلاثينات اسمه ستيوارت براند. هو اول واحد طلب من النازا يطلعوا صوره الارض بشكل كامل، ما كانوا رافضين يفرجوا صوره الارض بشكل كامل، محتفظين فيها كسر او كنوع من IP intellectual property. ونجح بهذا الشيء. بقول شغله، بقول once a new technology rolls over you, if you are not part of the steamroller يعني أحدث، you are definitely part of the road. وأنا أكيد من بعد اللي سمعناه اليوم والسكسس ستوريز أكيد يعني شفنا وجوه شاب بالمجال الببليك سيكتور، أكيد رح نكون نحن إذا مش بالستيم رولر يمكن نقود الستيم رولر. بقى شكرا للجميع، ورح اترك الكلمه الاخيره لمعالي الوزير، عنده كمان كوت عم ينافسني على
لا الكوت تبعي it's for the intervention of Steve about education. It's Darwin's quote. It fits perfectly for your last slide. It's not the strongest species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the most responsive to change. So that's the new educational paradigm we should implement. Thank you.
والآن تفضلوا إلى الاستراحة.